So here we are again. I'm shooting the same video for the fourth time now. This is actually the first video I uploaded, but only had like 200 views, which is a big success for my channel. But in the end, not many people noticed that such a thing exists, and it had just the most horrific quality. And I don't want the reason to click away from this video be the quality. I mean, if it's me and my content, I can totally deal with that, but the quality shouldn't be the issue. So here we are again. What was the video about? Some might say it's just another version of a classically Abby-like channel, but I'm convinced that reasonable people will get my point. So my topic wasn't cursing on feminists, but only taking a break from feminism, and in particular to appreciate non-feminist stories for the sake of women. To do so, we'll take a closer look on Yasujirō Ozu's Late Spring. First of all, we have to define the term feminism to distance ourselves from it later on. It can mean various things. At this point, I'm convinced that each of us has to develop a personal understanding of it to deal with feminist issues in the circumstances we live in. Not every concept, not every theory is applicable to every living condition. Since we are going to talk about film, I think it's most reasonable to take a closer look on feminist film theorists. I don't want to go into particular direction. The history of feminist film theory can be tracked back to 50s, 60s, maybe 70, 80 years back. But there is a certain moment which marks kind of a particular start in feminist film theory. Laura Mulvey's paper from 1975, Visual Pleasure Narrative Cinema, which introduced us to the concept of the male gaze. Some have already heard of that. Of course, it's not an absolute concept that can be used for every movie, but the impact of her paper was so influential that the theories that came afterwards were mostly reactions to her paper. What started off as a critical reading of movies that were produced by a male-dominated industry for male spectators took various directions over the time. Today, when we speak of feminist film theory or feminist theories in general, they also include problems of race, gender identity, sexual orientation. Also, male-dominated film practices fell under the radar of film scholars. If you are interested in that topic, I'll link some of the papers in the description box. I gained most of the knowledge in that area, mostly from classes in my film studies. I appreciate all of them. With each text, I got a new perspective, a new understanding that allowed me new approaches on film. Even so, I have the feeling that most of those theorists' texts take the problems, issues they deal with into the complete opposite direction without a middle ground. We shouldn't lose genuinely told stories on our way only because they don't deconstruct disadvantaging structures of society. For me, cinema that understands its non-male characters and writes its stories from that understanding serves its subject. This may sound like the bare minimum, but it's not. Like I said, most feminist theories and movements, not only in cinema, bear the danger of putting a lot of women in an inferior spot themselves. There's already a wonderful video out there that talks about how some feminist movements disregard women their autonomy only because they are obedient to patriarchal structures. If you watch the video, you'll get what I mean. I can't add much to that other than I know what I'm speaking about because I've been one of those feminists. I've become a feminist because, all Muslim women are oppressed, and even now I'm forced to wear the hijab. I'm joking, of course. For real. I have many families around me that peacefully or not so peacefully are built upon traditional gender roles. And as the dumb teenager I was, after my feminist awakening, I had the feeling of superiority towards those devoted wives, mothers, and daughters. But as I grew and tried to understand their devotion and actions, I realized that most of them are far better than me in many ways. That's when I decided to take a break from my feminism and value the lives those strong women lead. Diminishing everyone who takes part in those traditions doesn't do women any favor either. A look into Noriko's life from late spring will take us closer to what I mean by that. A little disclaimer before. The injustice and inequality behind the camera is a topic for itself, for a whole other video, so I don't want to go into that today. I don't think that spoilers in our example will ruin your movie experience, but beware, we are going to break down the whole story from beginning to end. So, Late Spring is a 1949 released movie by the great Yasujirō. For those who haven't heard of him yet, he's one of the most influential Japanese filmmakers. From 1927 to 1962, he created over 50 movies. Like in all of his films, Yasujirō does not devote Late Spring to great conflicts. He rather gives his audience a comprehensible story of everyday life. A widowed Professor Somiya Shukichi, played by Chichu Ryu, lives with his daughter Noriko, played by Setsuko Hara, a harmonious life, but when everyone around him states that the 27-year-old Noriko should soon be married, he reluctantly makes every effort to persuade his daughter, the only family member he has, into marriage, of course for her own good. It's important to note that this film also counts as shomongeki, a term for melodrama in Japanese cinema that deals with the problems of the proletarian middle class. Thus, this story takes place in an environment that is highly marked by Japanese traditions. In Late Spring, as well as in all other films, we see conventional family structures. It's an obvious reproduction of the society he lives in without an extreme or radical deconstruction. Yet, as a very skilled director, Ozu is able to find his aesthetics through the simplest things. He also can question norms in the most subtle way. Interestingly, it's known that the director himself never built his own family, only to look after his widowed mother. The sacrifice of bachelor for the sake of a parent is a recurring theme in his movies. Although there is an obvious autobiographical relation to that theme, most of the time he prefers to show the issues women have to face regarding that topic rather than men. It's a difficult situation regardless gender, but no one can deny that women are more likely to be pressured when they reach a certain age. So we have our heroine Noriko. She lives peacefully. We see her working, enjoying activities, and caring for her father. Therefore, it seems more than natural that she would not want to get married when she receives proposals. Nevertheless, the film ends with an allusion to her wedding. I say allusion because the process of her meeting her groom and getting married is not shown at any point. The story focuses completely on her conflict of living up to her father's expectation despite hesitation. This is exactly what I meant by reproducing conventional systems and stylistically questioning their outcome. Noriko's sadness shows throughout the whole movie. Here I want to point out the mesmerizing performance by Setsuko Hara. Not many actors could express the depths and struggles of a kind person who has a constant smile on her face. So Noriko is sad but plays along. Mr. Shuguchi's sadness, on the other hand, is also nothing hidden. Despite his love for his daughter, he constantly tries to convince her to move on from their life together. Of course, in traditional manners, he only lives through his grief when Noriko isn't around. He even makes her believe that her leave would be much better for him because of a remarriage. But then, the end of this conflicted situation comes, and the film punches the depths of his sadness right into our face. Right before the final moment, he confesses to Noriko's best friend that he actually never planned on remarrying and only wanted Noriko not worry for him anymore. When he comes back home in the absence of his beloved daughter, facing the loneliness he must live with for the rest of his days, the audience feel wholeheartedly the pain of this old man's sacrifice. But why all the sadness? Couldn't Noriko simply live by the side of her father just as they were? If I had to judge their circumstances from a feminist standpoint, this movie would require Noriko to act against the expectation. To be honest, on my first watch, as I wasn't quite familiar with Ozu's work, I actually wished for that ending, but now I'm happy I didn't get what I wanted. Rationally, it doesn't make any sense that both characters act against their will. It feels like fulfilling society's expectations for the expense of one's own happiness. Yet, the film shows us that in their worldview, it's quite the opposite. Near the end, father and daughter have an important conversation on their last trip together, where Mr. Shuguchi says the following: "Marriage may not mean happiness from the start. To expect such immediate happiness is a mistake. Happiness isn't something you wait around for, it's something you create yourself. Getting married isn't happiness. Happiness lies in the forging of a new life shared together. It may take a year or two, maybe even 5 or 10. Happiness comes only through effort. Only then can you claim to be man and wife." Taking this definition into account, their sacrifices are not made against but in favor of Noriko's happiness. Most of the time, I might be a radical, sometimes annoying, sometimes even maybe very toxic feminist, believe in the fight of creating sound and spaces for everyone. From time to time, we need radical theories and activism to create those spaces. Of course, together, we should work towards a society that acknowledges various lifestyles for everyone. But we also have to be aware of the realities we live in, that are far away from the ideal. If we see abuse, extreme force, or a woman or anyone who seeks out for help, we should do everything we can do. But we shouldn't view every woman who lives up to a traditional gender role as someone who needs to be saved. This is nothing but pleasing our own savior complex. Those individuals don't need to be saved, they need to be understood and respected.